Kia ora koutou YouTube. So here we're going to look at something I've been thinking about for a bit, spurred by a comment about thinking that the Toki lashing was a functional one rather than just decorative, and it appears that way, which is one of the reasons I think it's pretty cool. But the old people did use it as a functional lashing, and I think it's pretty cool when you can make a toki that doesn't need a hole to go right through it. In some ways it kind of preserves the mana of the piece without having to need a hole or a hidden feature to make it work. So I've been thinking a bit about my toki and how I can go about that, and combining with I've just learned an easy 4 plait as well, which makes this work quite well. This is what I come up with and what I'm using now for my my no hole toki lashings. So here's the guy here that we're going to be working on. A beautiful piece of Marsden flower jade, and you can see I've carved some grooves in the top. So if you're trying to relash a toki, you may need to retrofit some of these bits in here, because to make it look good. I mean, you can do it without these grooves. The important part you do need, something to point with. The important part you do need is you need to have it quite deep in these side bits here. Okay. If you don't have these grooves, it just means it's going to be a bit of a bump in the final lashing. But yeah, both of these grooves do need to be quite deep. So the first part, is to get your strings, which are going to become the necklace cord. Okay, so that's what I got here. So I got one set of 2, so that's 2 there, and the other set up here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are going to become the actual necklace cord. They're going to be the 4 plait on each side. Now I'm going to try and thread them, one set across the top and up the back, and the other one's opposite. Let's do it. So these are going to go on the back. You need to make sure they're in the middle. Okay, so that's what I'm doing now, is pulling them up so they're even in the middle. Okay, crossing one over that way and the other over there. They don't need to be sitting perfectly now. You get the idea. So that goes that way and flat across the back. Now with these other ones, I'm going to flip this over and place them on the other side. Let's make them in the middle. So just gently pulling up to make sure they're even, and then cross them over. One that way, one that way. Now this part here is probably the fiddliest, because at the moment nothing is secure. Okay, so we've got lashing that way and lashing that way. Now the next step is to tie a whipping knot at the top, which will push them all down. So it's going to be coming out that way. So as I tie this whipping knot, what I've just done might come undone, and that is okay, because we can still redo it. So if you're not sure how to do whipping, I've done a tutorial on how to do that, and I'll link that below in the comments. That's what I'm going to do now. When you do the whipping, you want to make sure the long end, the end that's going back to the cord, this one here, so we've got the short end here of the whipping, and the long end, which goes back to a big roll, is pointing towards the toki, because that's what you're going to use for the lashing. Okay. Just looking for the outside so I can untangle my mess here. Big part of working with knots and stuff is always keeping the extra tidy. Okay, so what have we got? Got a few wraps on there, a few more. Okay, that should be enough. Pull through. Okay, so now we've got our whipping. So now we need to push that down to the top, which will hold these in place well enough for us to start the actual lashing, which will hold everything together. Look at that. Okay, so we've got the whipping on top, and we got all of our threads sitting in their grooves. Ideally, they're pretty much flush with the Pounamu. Ideally. That's the size of the grooves that you need. Okay, let's tighten up that whipping. Okay, so this cord here, actually, this one here, we can chop this one off now. This is just a short one coming out the top of the whipping. So we'll get rid of that, simplicity's sake. Now, I'm going to show you, so this cord here, this comes all the way over here. This is all my extra bit of cord, there it is, and it goes up to, and I've got a set up on a roll up here, which can just pull off as I go along. It doesn't really matter how you got it set up, but that's what where that's going to. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull through. So where are we? So I'm pulling off the roll now. I'm pulling through a good amount off the roll, probably about a metre or two, because it's going to be where I pull it back through at the end. So I'm laying this across the back, and then with the one that comes out of the whipping, I'm starting to do my toki lashing. Okay, so it comes down. Now this is why these bits need to be big enough to have the 4 strands going around underneath, and then enough to be able to do for this to lock it in as you do the actual lashing. So across the front, back under the back, and then we go up. As you're doing this, you've got to keep flicking this over your pull through piece, which is still attached to the whole coil. If this wants to stay up nice and close to the top, then we pull it right out the top of the end. Right. So the cord I use is flat cord. So you can see when I lay it down, I lay it flat. It can be twisted like that. I'm trying to keep it flat to give the nicest finish. There's round cord out there as well, which doesn't matter as much, I guess. Okay. around there, back around the top, and down. You keep following that pattern. Where you put these first crosses on the side here, it matters where they're going to end up. So if they're centered, they're going to go down this middle. Sometimes they start falling towards the front, which isn't the end of the world. Just gives it a bit of a different look. It's all about the first cross and where you actually end up putting them. So make sure your first couple of rounds are where you want them. And then from there, just carry on until we're all full. There you go. And then the pull through. So, like I said before, let's tidy this up first. Get that out of the way. So, like I said before, this piece here is a piece that goes up the top, up to the roll. This piece here is the one I've been wrapping, and this makes a big loop, so it goes down and then back up and connects up to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this one through underneath all of this, and it will pull this through, which will pull this through and hide that underneath the lashing. Okay, so there it is, here's the bottom of the loop. So there we go. So now it's the lashing, goes around, and that final time tucks up underneath, goes right through and pops out the top there. And now we can trim that off. And there we go. So there is our no-hole Toki lashing. So those grooves mean that this could be nice and flat and flush on each side. If you didn't have those grooves, there could be some bumps, particularly on this part here, along the front, where they cross over there, but it's not the end of the world. So from here, we need to do the 4 plait, 2 4 plaits down each side. Right, so here we are doing a 4 plait. This little hobby vise that I bought is one of the best things for helping out with plaiting. Makes everything so much easier. Okay, so there's a bunch of different ways to do a 4 plait, and I found the easiest way for me to do one, which is similar to the way I do my 3 plaits, just with 4. So I've got another video of how I do this as well, so you can check that out in the links if you want to see how I do my 4 plaits. Okay, so here we are, finished the full plait. Here's how that comes out. The last stage is to tie some whippings on the ends as some sliding knots. So I won't go through in detail of how to do that here, but there's another tutorial of how to do that one. I'll link it below. You can check out if you want to see that. But here we go. And voila, these are two sliding knots, and these are Toki Lashing. No holes, keep it all intact. Awesome, kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you learned something. Drop any comments or questions below. I'll do my best to get back to everybody. So, ngā mihi nui, kia koutou.